You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, an Indiana-based public relations enterprise, and federally certified veteran-owned small business. I'm your host, Robert Bain, along with our producer, Chris Spangle. Thinking of starting a podcast or need to host a public meeting? Let Leaders and Legends, LLC, be your partner as you look for new ways to communicate your message. Please contact us at chris@leadersandlegends.net. As always, all our podcast interviews are dedicated to the legacy and generosity of P.E. McAllister. Our podcast is featured on the All Indiana Podcast Network in partnership with Wish TV. You may find Leaders and Legends at allindianapodcastnetwork.com. I'm your host, Robert Vane. Our producer most of the time is Chris Spangle, but today we are in the All Indiana Podcast Network studio. And guess how we got here? Who gave us permission? His name is DuJuan McCoy. He is the man who is making the news by buying some news. And we're going to talk about that. It's very interesting what's happening in the Indianapolis media market. DuJuan is a native of Indianapolis, Indiana, graduated from Ben Davis High School in 1985. How many state championships were won while you were at Ben Davis?
Good question. None. That happened when I was there. Delahan came right after I graduated, so all the championships came after 1985.
Cause and effect?
And we're talking about football, too, by the way.
Or it seems like you all win one every year.
Yeah.
Some wonderful people I know from the Ben Davis community about that time. The Stefanoffs.
Yes.
Kelly Campbell was, I think, a couple of years behind you, but there were several people, because I used to work at the Holiday Inn Airport at the front desk, and almost everybody who worked there were Ben Davis. It's such fun working with them. DuJuan is the president and CEO of Circle City Broadcasting. He just paid $83 million to buy the ABC affiliate, WRTV, here in Indianapolis. DuJuan, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast that you helped make happen.
Well, Robert, thank you for the invitation. When you reached out to me on Tuesday after the close and said, hey, will you interview with me? I said, and you know as well as I know, I responded, absolutely, okay? So I appreciate you reaching out and also being a supporter of the All Indiana Podcast Network. What you've been doing with Leaders and Legends is pretty phenomenal. So thank you, and I'm glad to be here today.
Well, we know you have a lot going on, and we're grateful. We're going to get right to it. One of the things that is happening in the Indianapolis media market, not just to the Indianapolis media market, but really throughout the country, is mergers and acquisitions. The shrinking of the newsroom, TV or print. We're not going to print on Saturdays anymore, fill in the blank for the newspaper. What's your take on the Indianapolis media market landscape, and how did your experience, inform your decision to purchase WRTV?
So when I purchased Wish TV and WNDY, September 19th, 2019, I knew that owning an independent /CW and a My Network affiliate was not going to create longevity for me just by owning those two TV stations, okay? And if folks recall, I got in a huge dispute with Dish and DirecTV, and I sued them, okay? Why? Because the owner prior to me, Dish and Direct, distributed and paid Nexstar for the distribution of Wish and WNDY. During my lawsuit, they pretty much said, well, if he had a Big Four affiliate, okay, we'd pay him, okay? So once that came out on the record, and once I found out that was the requirement for them to pay me, okay, I sought a Big Four affiliate, okay? I'm born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I've made it known I want to be big in the state of Indiana. I want to be the media guy for the state of Indiana. I'm homegrown. I'm born and raised here, went to Butler University here, and it's not often that an individual gets to buy and run and own TV stations in their hometown. Okay. That's a phenomenal proposition, and it's something that I don't take lightly. When you can influence and affect your community on a day-to-day basis by the amount of news that we do and about with the stories that we do, that's just a phenomenal feeling in having the ability to give back to a community in which I was raised. Okay. So once I realized that I needed to buy a Big Four affiliate, THR was part of a larger company, okay? And it was known that they were trying to sell their entire company, not one off. So for me, I couldn't go pick off WTHR and buy that TV station. I did know that Scripps was having financial issues, okay? And Scripps is the owner of WRTV. And I knew that would possibly be the station that I could buy in the market. So over 2.5 years ago, I reached out to Scripps and I started the process to try to buy WRTV. We reached a deal a couple times and it got pulled away and got changed out. Then in October, they called me back. Well, actually in September, they called me back and said, hey, we're making some changes. You always had an interest in WRTV. Are you interested? I said, are you kidding me? This is what I've been waiting on. I need a Big Four affiliate. I love a Big Four affiliate in the Indianapolis market. So make a long story short, we did a deal in a short amount of time and agreed to $83 million. Okay. So that's how it came about. That's why I bought WRTV. And I'm happy that it finally closed. One of the challenges that we knew we were going to have when I agreed to purchase the station was asking for a waiver. Why? Because the FCC does not allow, has never allowed one owner to own 3 full power TV stations in a market. Okay. I didn't ask for a waiver for WRTV. Okay. I was buying WRTV. I asked for a waiver for the lesser of the 3 stations, which was WNDY. Okay.
Right.
And if anybody wanted to follow this, all you had to do is go to the FCC website and pull up my waiver request, okay, on why I was asking for a waiver for WNDY. And basically all the reasons that I listed in my public record and FCC filing for that waiver, the FCC and the Media Bureau agreed with me. Okay. They said DuJuan deserves the waiver for My Network 23. He's proven that he's a local guy. He's got 163 live local sporting events. He does more local news than anybody on a non-Big Four affiliate. He deserves the right to keep WNDY and have 3 Big Four affiliates, okay, or 3 full power affiliates. So that was the first time ever in the history of TV. So that was historic, and I was grateful to the commission and the Media Bureau for making me the poster child for something very, very new in the media business.
Now, I'm very lucky in that I'm a part of the community sort of forum that meets quarterly at Wish TV. That's the last time I've seen you prior to today, so it's about 6 months ago. Do you remember this exchange where I said, hey, if you need any PR help when you buy WRTV, just let me know? The response I got from Mr. McCoy was, quit listening to rumors. I believe that quote is accurate.
That quote is accurate. No, we laugh about it because when you do these deals, you're under NDA. Okay?
Sure.
And I don't violate NDAs from that standpoint, okay, or any NDA. So you had heard a rumor and other people had heard a rumor, okay? It wasn't my place to validate your rumor. So yeah, you sniffed it out, okay? But for me, and let's get down to the elephant in the room, I anticipated exactly what went on after we purchased WRTV from a social media attacking standpoint, okay? So nothing that has happened is a surprise to me, and it was expected from the community.
Full disclosure, I was not hired to do public relations work for Mr. McCoy on this. You mentioned the criticism. Let's talk about that right now, because what I don't want to do is put off the benefits, because there are benefits. And if you just paid attention to social media, you wouldn't necessarily know that. But I want to start at the top. Ana Gomez, she's a Democrat FCC commissioner. Based on everything that you just described, she's been very critical. You've said you wanted to meet with her. Based on everything that you've just described in the waivers and your local public interests, do you anticipate FCC problems, either just from her or the whole organization? Because her comments are pretty tough.
No, not at all. Okay. In fact, I had a private conversation, and we're going to keep it private, with Gomez and her team on yesterday. And it was very educational from both persons' perspective, mine and hers. And we walked away with that from that meeting with an assurance that the perceived stereotyping that I got from the comment wouldn't happen again from Gomez. I believe, unfortunately, clumped with big mergers and large conglomerate mergers, which is obviously a huge topic of discussion right now. And I had an opportunity, and she gave me an opportunity to tell her otherwise, okay? And I believe she saw from a business perspective and where I'm going with WRTV, and it was a really, really fruitful meeting. I don't expect any issues from anybody at all, particularly when we finish building out and I finish fulfilling out what I plan to do with WRTV. One of the things I always talk about and I always say is the trend is your friend. The trend is your friend, okay? I remind people all the time, I am not a cutter. I am an adder of news. If you look at DuJuan McCoy's trend in history of buying TV stations, in 2007, when I bought Fox affiliates in San Angelo and Abilene, guess what I added? They didn't have a news. I added news. When I bought a CBS and a Fox affiliate in 2015 in Evansville, Indiana, there were a Fox and a CBS that didn't have news. Guess what I added? A full-blown newscast. 2017, I buy the NBC and the Fox in Lafayette, Louisiana. Guess what they didn't have? They didn't have a news. I added news. And I'm buying from bigger companies, okay? So if you look at DuJuan McCoy's track record, okay, he doesn't have a track record of cutting news and reducing journalism and whatnot. He buys products and stations that he can improve upon, okay, and do more in the local community. What people forget about me is that I'm born and raised here in Indianapolis. So I got a reputational stake here because this is my hometown and I'm going to deliver the goods just as I feel like I've delivered the goods for Wish TV. People forget that I've added news on Wish TV and I'm not even a Big Four affiliate, okay? I do over 90 hours of local content on Wish TV. More local news than any TV station in the country, okay? When I looked at buying WRTV, and this is the business end of what people don't understand, okay? When you look at buying a property, you don't look at buying the property or the station to run it the exact same way as the previous owner. The reason that previous owner is selling it is because they can't figure out how to operate it, okay? I have made a living at improving operations and using economies of scale and using my systems and my business plans to more effectively run operations that I purchased. When I purchased RTV, I had a business plan, okay? And part of that business plan is to level set what I thought in that operation was not level set. And I'm not going to be specific there because I got NDAs, but if the pay scale was inordinate, okay, it was my responsibility to correct that pay scale, okay? If bodies were in wrong positions, I felt like wrong positions at that TV station, okay, it is my responsibility and part of my plan to put those bodies in the right position. If you got too many employees in one part of the business, okay, and I don't run it that way, it is my responsibility and my prerogative to run the business that I'm buying the way that I want to run the business for sustainability. People have to keep in mind, the previous owner is selling because they can't figure out how to operate that from a sustainability standpoint, okay? If folks saw we've owned a television station for less than a week, now for about a week. Okay. Actually, it's a week today. Okay. We closed at 3:15 last Tuesday. Okay. And we are doing all live news. I can tell you this, Scripps did not do all live news. They did hybrids of recorded news. Okay. I'm doing all live news as we speak. Okay. I'm going to add May 4th, more journalistic local hours to RTV. We've already announced that we've announced our morning team. Okay. They had one morning person, maybe two every once in a while. I got 4 in the morning. So I'm adding bodies. Okay. Despite what these anti-consolidation folks are pitching and trying to say that all consolidation is the same. All consolidation is not the same. Okay. No, I'm not for any antitrust mergers. I'm not into monopolies. I don't get into that. But each merger on a case-by-case basis can be more beneficial to a local community, okay, than an operator or a station trying to stand alone, struggling, okay, to survive. Okay. When you merge with a company in a market, there is a term called synergies. There is a term called leveling out. Okay. People, not just in broadcasting, when businesses merge, they have a right to synergize and not duplicate bodies. I don't need 2 directors of sales. I don't need as many producers as they had. I don't need as many engineers because I'm running it in the same facility that I'm running Wish TV out of. So it does not, for people that don't understand business and don't understand M&A, this is not just a broadcast deal. This is an M&A issue, not issue, but M&A proposition. When you do mergers and acquisitions, you get to benefit from the synergies. And that's all we're doing here. I am never cutting journalism. I have never cut journalism ever, okay? In the history of DuJuan McCoy's TV, I've always added, okay? And I got to tell you, this is not a knock on Scripps. I'm not following Sinatra. I know how many journalists they had, okay? I know how many journalists I'm going to have once we get through this initial transition, and I promise you, it will be more. We will do more local stories. We will do more local content. We will have more bodies on the street generating articles and content for our local community. I can promise you that. It just takes a little time.
You are listening to the Leaders and Legends podcast. Our guest is DuJuan McCoy. He is president and CEO of Circle City Broadcasting. I'm sure that wasn't an accident coming up with that name. We're discussing his role, his prominence in the Indianapolis media market, focusing on Indianapolis. As he's mentioned, it's his hometown. It's my hometown. I want to read you a headline.
Okay.
It goes just to kind of what you were talking about. Quote, WRTV's new owner promised more news. It fired the staff. Is that a fair observation on behalf of this other Indianapolis media outlet?
No, I don't think it's a fair observation, okay? Because we did not fire the entire staff. We hired some employees that we had an opportunity to talk to, and we offered each employee that wasn't taken on day one of the transaction to interview for open positions, okay? So day one versus longevity is long-term is different for me, okay? When you buy a television station, okay, and you don't know every employee, okay, and I get an opportunity when I buy to put whoever I want to put on my payroll, because that's a right I have as a business owner, just as you, Robert, as a business owner, you can hire who you want to hire too, because that's what happens in America, and that's what happens in Indiana, okay? Just because I don't hire those people does not mean I don't have a plan or an opportunity to hire other people, or I won't hire them. I just need to be able to hire people on my terms and under my policies and under my procedures. And just because you were employed at a company that I purchased does not guarantee you immediate employment with me. You have to go through the process, and you have to compete for a job just like everybody else has to compete for the job. And when you're creating something like I'm doing and trying to relaunch WRTV as the new RTV. I want the pool of people and candidates to be the largest I could possibly get. I'm casting a wide net so that I can really grow this property into what I think this property can eventually be. Okay. And I want to do it on my time and my terms with the people that fit our culture and fit what we're trying to do. And I think that's apropos for all businesses when you want to hire the people that you want to hire. They have that right to do it.
Personnel questions, obviously, and personal can be fraught, and you have NDAs and you have agreements and all this stuff. So I want to be careful, and I understand if there are questions you can't answer, but it's fair to say, and this is what I just gleaned from your comments a little bit, and that is, just because you worked at Channel 6 doesn't mean you're automatically going to work at Channel 8. But just because you worked at Channel 6 doesn't mean you can't work at Channel 8.
That is correct. And when you keep saying Channel 8, it's Channel 6 because they have an opportunity to pitch for jobs that are applicable and open for Circle City Broadcasting,
Sure.
which includes now WRTV. Okay. We've even reached out, to be candid, we've even reached out to people that we didn't offer immediately, okay, and offered them jobs that we thought they could work within our organization. I'll give you an example. I don't need another director of sales, but we like the director of sales at WRTV. We offered him a regional sales manager's job because I already have a director of sales, but we wanted to extend an offer to him. He didn't accept. That was his right to not accept, okay, and it is my right to not double up where I don't need to double up from an employee standpoint. That is what non-business people, folks that don't understand business don't understand. Okay. That's the backlash that I get from a social media standpoint that I'm so glad you asked me to do this podcast because I think I'm giving them an opportunity to educate these folks on what M&A is about. Okay.
Well, you led me right to my next question, which I have so many, and we only have you for an hour, but I don't want to miss this one because it's not just Circle City Broadcasting, the TV stations. Wasn't that long ago, Nate Feltman purchased the Indianapolis Business Journal. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 20 years now, memory could be failing. Gannett purchased the Indianapolis Star. So it's not just you, it's not just TV, it's not just this market. How important is it for journalists to understand the business of media? And how important is it for businessmen, business people, to understand the lifeblood of journalism and its importance and how it operates separate from maybe an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, so I don't look at the world specifically from an Excel spreadsheet. I am a journalistic guy and I'm a local content creator. Okay. I create a lot of local content and I take that seriously. And I want that to be journalistic content. We are not a Facebook page that had just slapped up and is just making comments. We are legacy news stations that have journalistic reputations, and I do not take that lightly, and that is part of my core. Okay, from a journalistic standpoint of the journalists, you have to understand that the business is evolving. Technology is changing the game. AI is changing the game. The digital aspect is changing the game, okay? And you as journalists have to adapt and have to accept that the technology and mergers and acquisitions are part of it. And what you can do to ensure that you keep a job is to be the best that you can possibly be and to embrace all of these new changes. If you cannot embrace all of these new changes, get out of the business. Go do something else. But I'm telling you, okay, this is the future. What TV is trying to avert, okay, is what happened to newspaper. Lots of newspapers shut down because they couldn't convert and they couldn't adapt, okay? TV is trying to hedge our bet, and we're trying to embrace technology. We're trying to push for respectful, non-antitrust, non-monopoly M&A so that we can survive, okay, and we can compete. Big tech has changed the game. Okay. YouTube, Facebook, Meta has changed the game. Okay. The data that they have on individuals, okay, hurts the advertising game. TV used to be the preponderance of all the revenue, okay, that went into a market. Then came Google, then came the search engine marketing, then came Facebook, then came email marketing, okay? And we got hit, okay? When we got hit, we have to adjust, okay? When you're running a business, when your revenue drops, guess what happens to expenses? If you don't adjust expenses, okay, you go out of business, or you have to sell, or if you can't figure out how to manage the business properly, you can end up like these dinosaur newspapers, unfortunately, that only work on a freelance basis and have a paywall, and they're paying their journalists on a per writing deal, and there's no culture, and they're just doing enough just to survive. TV does not want to do that. That's why we do what we do. We want to lobby. We want to tell the commission. We want to encourage the commission. Here's what we need to do to survive. That's why we need to M&A. That's why we need to try to double up in a market where we can double up with big fours, because we need the economies to compete against big tech. Okay, so that's the education and the bigger picture look of what's going on and what broadcasters are trying to avert. I play the long game, okay? I'm not trying to do a short-term deal. I'm not trying to react to social media on a short-term basis. I have a plan, okay? And this is a long-term proposition for me, and I really, really know, I really know the impact that we're going to have on this community when we're said and done is going to be phenomenal.
And forgive me for asking, because it's not necessarily any of my business, but since I have you in front of me, it's your contention, your pledge, your promise that Circle City Broadcasting is in the financial health required to do all the things that you have said you want to do.
Yeah. So if you look at my history of buying TV stations, okay, one of the things that, knock on wood, I've been pretty good at, Robert, is not getting in over my skis. Okay. And when you have financial partners that agree to support what I'm doing here at the $83 million level, okay, they have due diligence too, and they understand the game, and they don't loan money, or they don't give money to folks that don't have a track record of success. Okay. I am in the financial wherewithal to make this thing sing and win, or I wouldn't have done the deal. Okay. I have personal investment in the deal as well as reputational investment. Okay. So I'm going to win here in Indianapolis because that's just what I do. Okay. Everywhere that I've been, I've won, and knock on wood again, that speaks to how I buy and operate TV stations. Okay. I have been selective on everything that I've bought, and if I can't win, I don't buy.
You are listening to the Leaders and Legends podcast, our very special guest with exclusive interview. I've always wanted to say that. Exclusive interview with DuJuan McCoy, President and CEO of Circle City Broadcasting. He just paid $83 million to buy the ABC affiliate, WRTV, here in Indianapolis. Mr. McCoy, you've talked about born and raised in this area. Is there a particular Hoosier leader and or legend you admire most?
You know what? Governor Holcomb was a really, really good governor for the state, and top of mind, he would have to come top of mind. I'm also a Bill Hutnut fan. I grew up with the Hutnut hook. Okay.
In the racer's cap?
That's in the racer's cap. And that had a huge impact on me as a kid. I can still tell that story when Hutnut did the Clean Up the City act, and he was a tall guy, as folks knew, and he played basketball, and he would do the Hutnut hook and throw trash into a dumpster. So yeah, those are the two that come to mind, since that was an impromptu question. But Governor Holcomb was a super governor, I thought, and Hutnut.
You mentioned talent, duplicative, commitment to journalism, and I'm going to mention one particular name, not only because she is, in my view, the best reporter, pure reporter in town in what she does. And she just a few months ago was a guest on this podcast, and that's Kara Kinney. I've known Kara since I think the month that she came to the market, because I was working for Mayor Ballard at the time. I think she has one of the best brands in this market and beyond. Was it important to you to keep someone like Kara as part of your broadcast family? And maybe not only for her journalistic excellence, but to send the message, we'll pay, we'll retain, we'll recruit top talent in this market and beyond.
I will say this, that was part of it, but when I say Kara Kinney's name, I say winner, okay? I like winners, okay? So she was one of the few people that I had an opportunity to interview, okay? And she was impressive. Despite the work, not despite, but in addition to the work that she's been doing on air. I follow her. I'm in the market. Part of my plan, okay, and I'm only going to give bits and pieces because I don't want to tip my competition on what I'm doing there, but I'm gonna blow up investigative reporting from a Circle City broadcasting standpoint. Okay?
Augment, not destroy.
No, I'm going to blow up as meaning I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to expand upon, thank you for that clarity, expand upon investigative reporting from a Wish TV, Circle City broadcasting standpoint. And it's going to be like you've never seen before in the market. And I thought to myself, we got the best investigative person in the market. We're going to start with that one, okay? But that was my plan prior to even knowing Kara Kinney or even knowing that I was going to get WRTV, okay? Always said to myself, if I get multiple stations, get a big four, investigative reporting is something that is near and dear to my heart. Why? Because it holds people accountable, okay? And I believe that is a responsibility of a television station and that has a megaphone the way we do. So look forward to what we do over the next few months on investigative reporting.
What has changed the most for you? You've been in the executive, you were in sales, you mentioned you go to Butler, you're an entrepreneur. What's changed the most since your first foray into television ownership? And I like to ask this question, and I've had several reporters on, including several from Wish, several at the time, WRTV. And lucky enough, I'm getting ready to interview, speaking of Hoosier icons, leaders, and legends, Mr. Jack Reinhart has agreed to come on the podcast.
Beautiful.
What's changed the most, and what do you see changing the most in, let's say, the next 20 years?
The biggest single impact on broadcasting and the change is digital, and the impact of Google and big tech in streaming, which is all together to me on the broadcast business. Okay. It used to be that broadcasting prime time was during the Seinfeld years and the Cosbys and the Rescue and all the big prime back in the 80s and 90s. Okay. We had all the viewers. Now the networks chose to put a lot of that stuff on streaming. Okay. The primetime viewership now is splintered and bifurcated, and it's not on broadcast, but it may all be on the CBS platform, whether it be broadcasting or their streaming platform. Okay. Broadcasters don't get any cut of the streaming platform. That's not our deal. That's their deal. Okay. So we have to make adjustments on that lost revenue. We have to make adjustments on reverse retransmission fees, where we believe the networks are charging the affiliates more to build up their streaming versus improving the content on the big screen. That's just the cost of doing business. Okay. And that's something that we fight every day. So the biggest impact over the years, it's been streaming. Okay. 20 years from now, here's what I'll tell you, if broadcasters are not allowed to strategically merge where it makes sense, again, not antitrust, okay, not monopoly, but if we're not allowed to strategically merge, you could see in 20 years TV stations going away, okay? And you have to realize local TV stations are the conduits between communication, information with their local communities. Everything's local, and traditionally, broadcasters provide that. People don't understand. Here's an example, Robert. WishTV.com had almost, in 2025, 100 million articles read. I'll repeat that. Wish TV on wishtv.com had almost 100 million articles read by 20 million unique visitors. When we look at broadcasting, most novices or people that don't get the business say, oh, nobody's watching broadcast. And you know what? They're watching our broadcast, but they're reading our content online, and we have to pay journalists and we have to pay folks to write those articles. So we're providing that information from a different platform or an additional platform. Okay. And that's important. Okay. That's important to know because our content is being consumed voraciously. Okay. Online. Okay. Not just the big screen. I'll give you another example.
Just say guilty as charged.
You got it. Okay. I'll give you another great example. Okay. Most television stations around the country are cutting sports. Guess what DuJuan McCoy is never going to do? I'm not cutting our sports department. Why? Because we have a digital machine, and I believe we have the best sports director in the country in AC, Anthony Calhoun. Okay. And in first quarter, he had just him alone, sports department. When I say him, I'm talking about the Wish TV sports department, had over 20 million articles read on IU in their run and Purdue, in their basketball run. 20 million articles read. I can't get 20 million people to watch my television station, but I can impact 20 million people with ACs and the sports department articles. Okay. People don't understand that. Okay. That is part of the game that we play, and we have to figure out a way to monetize that. And we're doing that, and that's getting better. So we're not just chasing the big screen. We at Wish TV and Circle City Broadcasting look at the entire ecosystem. And wherever that money goes, the money's been going to Meta digitally. Guess where I have to figure out a way to do? I have to figure out a way to go there. Right. Okay. And we've been very good, more so than a lot of bigger companies, in figuring out that game. Okay. When I agreed to buy WRTV, just so you guys get M&A or people that don't understand it, you look at, are they generating money in a certain area? How does that compare to me? Is their platform larger than my platform? How much more money am I generating? Is that potential upside for me on WRTV? And I got to tell you, it's mind blowing. Okay. That's why I know this merger is going to work. Okay. So I'm so excited about if you couldn't tell, about merging and integrating RTV into the Wish TV studio and getting to a point where folks say, I see what he's doing. Oh, the previous company didn't even stream live news on WRTV. They streamed the national news. He's streaming a local news. Okay. Their website not an interactive website with the community. He's going to have an interactive website and he's going to redesign it. So there's a lot of things.
And RTV used to have the Alpha Omega website. I don't think they were the indie channel for a while, but when they were the indie channel,
they had an impact.
Their website was far and away the most popular.
But what do they have now? You see what I mean? I'm not buying what they did have. I wish they would have kept it. Okay, I'm buying what I can improve upon. And that was an area of improvement for me that got me excited when I was going through my due diligence. So, yeah, hopefully that helps.
You mentioned not cutting sports. There's so many different ways and places to get sports.
Yeah.
Local and national. Indiana has been on this. Indianapolis, but Indiana has had 3 different colleges make it to the national championship game in 3 different sports, plus the Pacers. And then there's obviously the Caitlin Clark phenomenon and lots of other things. There was a great tweet this morning about all the all-star games and NCAA championships. So leaving sports aside, I agree with you, AC, who I've never had on the podcast, and that's a complete indictment of me. I need to do that. There's another sort of driver on social media interaction in the news media these days, and that's politics. It is an interesting time in United States and American politics. It seems to me that there's, without claiming causation or correlation, trust in the media has gone down considerably as Trump has risen, President Donald Trump. How do you, I don't know your political affiliation. It's none of my business. Obviously, I'm a Republican who's worked for both the party and elected officials and causes. So tell me, as a voracious consumer of political news, how do I know that I'm going to be treated, people with my views are going to be treated fairly? Because, and I bring this up only because every poll shows that Republican/conservative trust in the media lags far behind progressive, liberal, Democrat trust in the media.
So I try not to get into political debates because my viewers are Republicans, they're Democrats, they're independents and whatnot. And I usually don't get into those debates. Okay. Here's what I will tell you.
But from a business standpoint, it certainly matters. I will only just say that.
100% it does. We do a show, All Indiana Politics. Okay. And it's Garrett Bergquist and is the leader of the show. And he's one of the best political reporters. I will promise you, when you look at our political shows, we don't lean. We give information. We put both sides on our program and we let the viewer decide. We are not CNN. We are not Fox News. Those are opinion-driven networks, okay? And they have extreme leanings and extreme biases, okay? If you ever feel like you see a leaning on Wish TV or our political show, hit me up, okay? I'm easily accessible. We don't do that. And I think that is the value, and I think that speaks to local news stations and what we do in America and what we provide in America is a balanced attack or a balanced presentation on political news, okay? That's the only way for us to be. That's what we do. That's part of our FCC license. We're not designed to represent a political party. We're designed for the community interest and to provide information and educational information for our viewers, and that's what we do. So, and it's not, I'm not just saying that. All the polls read, all the studies say local television stations are more trusted than any national media out there. And that is the truth. And that is because we are really significantly focused on journalistic, non-biased presentations.
So much of the news these days has been about the RTV folks who were let go. Nobody loves to see, enjoys, has the sort of level of schadenfreude when someone loses their job. It's so tough. But what really hasn't been examined too much or discussed is the terrific, and it's easy for me to say this because, you know, part of my livelihood depends on a great relationship with the media. So I don't want to dismiss my own biases, of course. The terrific staff you already have at Wish TV.
Thank you.
I just worked with Hannah Mordo on a terrific story about women in construction during Women's History Month. A big fan of Phil Sanchez, not necessarily his baseball team, but him himself. All the folks I've worked with in this station and others in my 25 years doing PR. How has the reaction been from inside this house, inside Wish TV?
That is a very good question. I got to tell you, I'm a blessed guy. I got a team that is second to none, okay? We did not know that we were closing at 3:15 on Tuesday last week to 2 o'clock. We did not know that we were closing at 3:15 until 2 o'clock. And we knew that we had to get a news on the air, okay, from Wish TV. My team ran through brick walls and we got a news on the air from the Wish TV studio on behalf of WRTV in less than 3 hours, okay? We have anchors, we have reporters that are eager to help out, okay? We are the team and the leadership team, my engineers are really, really second to none. And every employee that we have for Wish TV is really embracing the transition. I got to tell you this, we had one employee that experienced the loss of an affiliation back in 2015 when Wish TV lost the CBS affiliate. And he came up to me and he said, DuJuan, you just don't know what this means to us. You just don't know. Having lost an affiliation and gaining one back, this just makes us feel like we're winning again. Okay. And that was really refreshing to me. And it gave me a better perspective of what this purchase meant to people that didn't feel like they were winning or felt like they've been kicked. Okay. And now this is their turn to win. So it's been a really, really uplifting, I wouldn't say spiritual, but it makes everybody feel good that we're adding another TV station to the mix. Okay. I can't wait to talk about what we're going to be doing differently that I can share with you from a
You're always welcome back.
From a competitive standpoint. I mean, there's just so much that we have planned for WRTV that I haven't even put out in the public yet.
Well, and I have a couple more questions before we get to the 5 questions, and we ask all of our guests on the Leaders and Legends podcast. But since you mentioned it, and it's become, looking at the names, talk to me, please, about your new morning show.
So the new morning show, it was announced yesterday, okay? And we had a plan, okay? And we knew that we were not going to be doing the same type of morning show that WRTV did, okay? And for me, I am eventually going to rebrand WRTV, okay? And now is not the time. I need to get my bodies in place. And if folks know what WRTV used to be when they had one, maybe 2 folks in the morning and a quasi-recorded / live news, we're going to have 4 there. We're adding bodies. We have a dedicated live reporter. Everything's going to be live from us. The folks that we have on staff, we have relationships with. We know, we interviewed, we got them ready for the staff for this morning show. So we put out the press release yesterday, and we're excited about what's going to happen on May 4th when we introduce this staff as a group. That's just the first thing that's going to happen, okay, for the morning show. We're going to there's just so much more that we're going to do that I don't want to tip my hat, but it's going to be really, really good for the community.
Please tell me you're going to introduce the morning show, the first broadcast on May 4th with the Imperial March. Since it's May the 4th, be with you.
You know what? I try not to stay.
Now, your guy right here behind you, he knows exactly.
I know, but I try to stay out of the content end of it, and I leave that to my content producers and my news director and executive producers, them putting on a great newscast, and I'm sure it'll probably be in there, but that's not my call.
The new anchors are Karen Campbell, Marley Thomas, very familiar meteorologist who's just such a sweet, nice person, very, very kind. Tara Hastings, reporter Alan Self, 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. Do you have to pay people extra so that they are on the air at 4 a.m.? Please tell me you pay them more.
Well, we pay them, but we do contracts and
more, though. Pay them more to get up at 2 in the morning and look good for a 4 a.m.
Well, that's all relative. More compared to what? No, we have contracts that we sign, and people don't want to agree to the contracts. That's okay. But yeah, the pay was acceptable for everybody, and that's what they agreed to.
One last question before we get to the 5 questions. We're sitting here in truly one of the great media buildings in this state. We get 15 journalists, none of whom work for you. And we get them in the conference room, and it's Q&A with DuJuan McCoy. Could you articulate in a way that would calm? Because I would say that the reaction on social media in the journalistic community in this market, and we've talked a lot about the business side, the journalistic community has been one of frustration with regard to their colleagues. It's a tight-knit group. They're very competitive, but as someone who's worked with them for a long time, I know that nobody thinks wants anything bad to happen to someone else.
That's correct, and that's understandable.
How would you allay their fears or address the trepidations about the future of journalism in this market as it relates to your properties?
So here's what I'll say. We will have and do more stories and more journalistic stories than we ever have when we add WRTV. We will need journalistic people to be the creators of those articles, okay? And we will seek those people out on our terms. We are looking for folks that understand technology, that can use technology to their advantage. And it's going to be a bright day for journalism with Circle City Broadcasting. That is the crux of what we do. And we will do more stories. We will do more local content. And I have to have content producers to do that. Okay. So we're hiring and we look forward to the wide net that we're casting. And hopefully we can get the best journalists that are available that want to work for us as well. Because again, it's a two-way street. It's not just DuJuan McCoy and Circle City Broadcasting. You have to want to work for us. And we make that clear when we interview. Here's how we do it here. Here's what we do. Okay. You have to do digital. You're not just on the air. Okay. And it's a new world. Okay. And I think part of the backlash that goes on is some of these journalists may not want to adapt to the new reality of a job. Okay. We don't have folks sitting around. We don't have anchors sitting around waiting for the next show. Our anchors are doing stories. Our state anchors are doing podcasts. One of the things Kara Kenny asked me when we were interviewed, DuJuan, I want to do it. I've never been able to do a podcast. Can I do a podcast? I said, you know what? It's funny you asked that. We have our own podcast network, the All Indiana Podcast Network, and you can do as many investigative podcasts as that you want. Okay. So
how the hell is she going to find a guest to come on her podcast?
I know.
She gets people.
I know. But that's what I'm getting at. It has changed. Okay. And we at Circle City Broadcasting we're adapting and we are changing with the times. I'm an entrepreneurial owner. I'm a hands-on owner. So I'm involved in the day-to-day operation. Yes, I'm buying TV stations. Yes, I'm doing M&A, but I have the bandwidth to be involved day-to-day. And if I see the trend's your friend, I'm going to adjust my operation based on the trends. We need more stories. From the same reporters that are doing or just used to doing video. They got to write stories as well. Okay. And we help those folks with technology, additional digital people. And we do that within Circle City Broadcasting. So those are the types of people that we're looking for from a journalistic standpoint to come into our family.
One more quick question. How important is it for you? I mean, the proliferation of media outlets in the last few years has been terrific for people like me who do public relations for a living. Nikki Kelly in Capitol Chronicle, the list goes on. I can't name them all. Axios and State's Newsroom and Mirror Indy, all doing terrific work. How important is it to you not only to hire journalists, but to keep them? Because one of the laments a lot of people have is the Jim Shellas are gone. The Jack Reinhardts, the Mary Millses, Derek Thomas, the list goes. I've been lucky enough to have Debbie Knox serve as a co-host on several podcasts. How important is it to you to keep people around so that they know what's going on based on the fact they've been here 10, 15 years and they have that knowledge and that network?
So it's very important to keep veteran skilled journalists around. Okay. Keep in mind what we have been going through for the last 4, 5, 6 years. We have been going through a correction. Okay. What I mean by a correction, we lost a lot of ratings. We lost a lot of viewership. We lost a lot of revenue. Okay. And seasoned veterans that were around when they had lead-ins of Friends and they had lead-ins of Mega Prime programming that was doing mega ratings, we can afford to pay people those high, inordinate amounts of income. Those days, okay, are few and far between now because we don't have the revenue to support that type of pay scale. Okay. We've been going through a correction. I'm being candid here. We've been going through a correction for quite some time now. So, and it's not just Circle City Broadcast. It is the industry as a whole. Okay. I get calls from folks that have been in the business for a long time that were making goo-gobs, and rightfully so, at bigger markets. And they want to come back to an Indianapolis market and they expect that those pay scales to be sustainable. No, the industry has, I'm sorry, but the industry has changed. Okay. And part of running a business is to make those corrections when you need to make those corrections, or you have to sell, you have to get out of business. Okay. And I'm not that type of operator because I stay hands on and I look at the trends because I'm a firm believer. The trend is your friend.
We've reached the point on the Leaders and Legends podcast where we ask the same 5 questions of all of our guests. Mr. McCoy, are you ready?
Yes.
What was your first job?
My first job was working at a place on West 16th Street called The Place. It was an oversized woman's store, and I was a stock boy. Okay. You want to hear a funny story about this?
Wait a second. It was an oversized women's store, or was it a store for oversized women?
It was a store for oversized clothing for women. It was called The Place.
Never heard of it.
At 16th, and no, you didn't. It was at 16th, right on by the Speedway on that road, 16th Street. And that was my first job. I made $3.85 out of that. And funny story, that was when I was 16 years old. I didn't know I wanted to get into TV. I get a job right out of college from Channel 4. Okay. First person I called on as a new business account executive was, guess who? The Place. And he gave me my first sale. Didn't know I was going to get in TV 5 years later after I worked for him. And that was my first sale that I closed. So that was my first job.
Channel 4 must have been fun to work there, given how big Channel 4 was. Our ages are basically the same. We're 6 months apart. How big Channel 4 was in our
Channel 4 was a behemoth.
childhood.
It was a behemoth. It had all the rights to every sporting event. This is before Regional Sports Network. We had IU, Purdue, Big Ten basketball, Gene Katie show, Bob Knight show, Pacer basketball, Colts preseason football. We had everything, and that is where I cut my pedigree. That's where I learned how to sell it from a local standpoint, because everything that we had on that television station was local. That's why I do so much sports on WNDY right now, because of that pedigree and that experience.
Dick the Bruiser.
Dick the Bruiser, that's exactly.
Sammy Terry.
Cowboy Bob and Janie. Peggy, the Sammy Terry, you're right. That's right.
Second question, what was your first concert?
Jackson 5 at Busch Stadium.
If you could suggest any book for someone to read, which book would you choose?
Now Discover Your Strengths. I'll repeat that. Now Discover Your Strengths. It's a Gallup poll book that gives, particularly if you're in business, it identifies what your natural business DNA is, okay? And it categorizes it into 35 different categories, and it tells you your top 5 is what drives you every day. And when you read that book, and if you take those top 5 seriously, like I do, okay, you will have and embrace it, you will have a more successful life, okay, from a business standpoint. I've had every manager that I've had, it works for me now, they have to take that test. Why? Because I want, as a leader, all of my leaders and all of my employees operating in their strength zones, okay? Staying focused on their top 5 traits. My top 5 traits are competitive, achiever, responsible, maximizer, and did I say achiever?
You did.
Competitive, strategic. Those are my top 5 traits. Those are the traits that drive me every day when I do business, okay? Competition is number 1 for me, okay? So I like to compete. I like to grind. I like to get after it. So that's the book. Now Discover Your Strengths. It's a Gallup poll book.
If you could witness any event in history, be there in person as it happens, which event would you choose?
Be there as it happens. Probably be there as landing on the moon. Okay, that's some catastrophic stuff that I've never had in my DNA, and that's something that anybody would want to do, to be able to walk on the moon or be there when you step foot on the moon. So that's phenomenal.
Last question. If you could have dinner with anyone living today, 2 hours off the record just to chat, whom would you choose?
That's a tough one. I don't know about that one. Who would I have dinner with for 2 hours off the record, it would probably be somebody like a John Maxwell, who is an author of management books, and he's one of the most renowned leaders and trainers in management, probably John Maxwell.
You have been listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies. We are an Indiana-based public relations enterprise, federally certified veteran-owned small business, and registered as such with the state of Indiana and the city of Indianapolis. As always, all our podcast interviews are dedicated to the legacy and generosity of P.E. McAllister. I'm your host, Robert Vane. Our guest today, DuJuan McCoy. You want to talk about newsmakers? He's making it. President and CEO of Circle City Broadcasting. I know this is an exclusive interview. You're very kind. Thank you for all that you've done for the Leaders and Legends podcast here at the All Indiana Podcast Network. Thank you for your time. And let me just say that despite the criticism that's coming around, and that's to be expected because we're human, we're rooting for you.
Thank you.
We're rooting for the people you are helping, rooting for the people you're employing, and we need your success in this city. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for listening to Leaders and Legends, brought to you by Veteran Strategies Incorporated. If you want to contact us about this program or our menu of public relations services, please send us an email at robert@veteranstrategies.com. That's robert@veteranstrategies.com.